So today I'm looking at two more yellows. I'm looking at some earth pigment yellows. So yellow ochre, yellow oxide, very, very similar. And I occasionally use, usually yellow ochre. Yellow oxide is new to me. I occasionally have used yellow ochre when I want to have a yellow that kind of holds its own on the palette. Some other yellows can really get overwhelmed really easily, or they're extremely transparent. Whereas yellow ochre, it's a nice strong color, although you don't get like the same brightness or pureness as you do out of like a lemon yellow or like one of the cadmium yellows. But they are very, very useful. Yellow ochre, I'm sure if you're an artist, you have used yellow ochre, you've at least heard of yellow ochre because it's extremely, extremely common. Yellow oxide, I actually didn't even realize I owned yellow oxide. I was looking at yellow ochre and thinking, what could I compare it to? And then I dug through this set of Chroma Artist acrylics that I had bought. This is a small company out of Vancouver that they mix their own paints and they are artist quality. And I bought a set there and I hadn't actually used this one yet. So I thought, hey, these will be great to compare to each other because they seem really, really similar. So Golden Yellow Ochre, of course, Golden is a well-known brand. They use PY43. The label says it's a natural hydrated iron oxide. It's also known as limonite or limonite. And it's a bit of a redder color than this yellow oxide. Chroma, like I said, this is a small company out of Vancouver, makes really nice high quality paints. I haven't used this color much because I haven't tested out this set that I bought from this company, but I can see that it's gray, and I'll show you some of my color mixing tests in a minute or so. They use PY42 as their pigment. Now, when I started doing some research on the two different pigments, I found PY43 is the pigment that indicates that it's a natural pigment. However, some of the manufacturers have moved to synthetic pigment, even though they're using PY43, whereas the PY42, I guess, apparently always indicates that it is synthetic. So, long story short, very similar, extremely similar. Some companies may use PY42 or PY43, and it might literally be the same pigment. You can tell these are a little bit different. I don't know if it's literally the same pigment or different, or if they just kind of handled it differently that gives it a slightly different look. So this is going to be different than most of my other color comparisons because these are extremely similar. Okay. So I'm going to do some color mixing, and I have my usual mix of colors that I test out. So I do 2 of the yellows, a cool and a warm, 2 reds, cool, warm, 2 blues, cool, warm. And then I have some secondary colors here. So dioxazine purple, sap green hue, and cad orange, just because they're commonly used. And then of course, titanium white, just to make sure that once we do the mixes, I can kind of see what we're actually dealing with, because some of the mixes end up being really dark. So let's look at the actual mixes. So here's the mixing sheet. So like I said before, yellow ochre, that's the golden, and yellow oxide. Let me just squeeze these on. So yellow ochre, a little bit redder than the yellow oxide. Yellow oxide, almost more of a gray, could almost be a bit of a green, but I'd say a gray mix. So very, very similar. Mixing it with the 2 different yellows, you get, slightly muddied down. If you just don't want as pure of a like bright lemon yellow, you can add a little bit of either yellow ochre or yellow oxide. Cad-free yellow, very similar on each side. I should say when I do these mixes, I don't necessarily like make sure that they're exactly the same. So they're just, this one has a lot more cad yellow, whereas this has a lot more of the either yellow ochre or yellow oxide. But to be honest, very similar mixes. Cad-free red, both of them, makes a nice kind of a rusty color here. Here you can just kind of mute down the red if you just add a little bit of the yellow oxide or yellow ochre. And Quin Magenta, make a beautiful berry color with both of them. Throughout all of these, the mixes, to be honest, they're just so similar that to me, it doesn't really matter which one you use. But they are both really nice, useful colors, I would say. Like ultramarine blue, you can take out that kind of a vividness to the ultramarine blue, get yourself like almost like a nice navy color. Here I mixed more of a olivey green, whereas here I had a lot more of the yellow ochre, so I just kind of dirtied up the yellow ochre. Phthalo blue. So phthalo blue is a very strong color when you're mixing with it. So my version that's supposed to have a lot of yellow, either yellow ochre or yellow oxide, ended up being quite green. It's more of like a middle, kind of midway between the two colors. But it makes a nice muted but much brighter sort of an olive green. And then the phthalo, like heavy phthalo, this took not a whole lot of phthalo blue-green shade, and it still was quite blue, but that could be nice ocean color. Dioxazine purple, of course, that's another strong mixing color. So here just kind of brings down the dioxazine purple from being quite so intense. Yellow and purple are on the opposite side of the color wheel, so you can kind of tone down one or the other. And as you can see, it just made the yellow oxide or yellow ochre a lot browner. Sap green here, you can just kind of add a little bit more of range into how much your olivey colors you get. If you look at this ultramarine blue, you could probably mix a similar color to sap green without having to have sap green, but you know, it's nice to have a convenience green. And this, you can see how much you could probably expand how many greens you can mix with either of these. And then cad orange. Cad orange and yellow oxide, they're not, or yellow ochre, they aren't that far apart from each other. So again, not dramatic changes, similar to with the different yellows, but you can, you know, kind of muddy it down or make it a bit less of an intense orange. So my thoughts on the two of these, they're so similar. It doesn't really matter which one you use unless you were really, really, really particular about your colors, but I'm not that particular. I mean, I think the yellow oxide, it almost seems like a little, you can make it a little bit brighter maybe, you know, rather than having the redder tone, but really it's, you know, it's whatever you can find in the store, which to be honest is probably going to be yellow ochre most of the time. Yellow oxide isn't as common, but Golden also has a yellow oxide, so you might be able to find it, you know, in a well-stocked store. But if you're in a store that has, you know, more of a selection of colors, you'll probably find a yellow ochre. I looked up the prices, very similar prices. So even the price, it doesn't really matter which one you go with. And I'm going to show you, I did a little test. Did a little painting here, very quick painting of hay bales, because I thought, hey, yellow ochre, yellow oxide, they look like hay bale colors. So a couple hay bales in front of a lake and a blue sky. I tried to add some of, you know, made sure to get some purple and blues and magentas and things like that throughout. But really, there's not that dramatic of a difference between these two paintings. I mean, yes, one of them has, you know, this bale's a little bit brighter, but that really has more to do with me using a bit more titanium white on that. So really, whichever one you want to use, they're both fantastic. They both can be absolutely useful. I don't think they're necessary on a palette, but I'd say it's handy to have more of like a stronger yellow that doesn't kind of get overwhelmed by other colors. You know, if you compare to when you mix with Hansa lemon yellow or yellow lemon, or even a cad yellow, these can get overwhelmed pretty quickly, but you also don't necessarily want kind of that pure bright color. So these yellow ochre, yellow oxide, they would be great to add to a palette.